just to clarify here, they are refusing service
to you.
Okay.
Because you
have a mask exemption.
Order.
Right.
There's no such thing as a mask exemption. You cannot go into a public place, such as a library or inside of a building, without a mask on.
That is a police officer trying to tell me that there are no exemptions for face coverings. He didn't know that I had a hard copy of the mandate in my pocket with the section on exemptions highlighted. To see his reaction when I present that to him, stick around for a bit. I have a precedent-setting case that is going to lay the foundational standard for people that are denied services because they are unable to wear face coverings. I'm currently suing a local library and gym for wrongfully terminating my ability to utilize their services, strictly due to a disability that prevents me from wearing any face coverings, which I have documented confirmation of from my doctor. Those blatant acts of discrimination have resulted in me only being able to shower once or twice a month, among many other issues. After speaking with a number of different lawyers and elaborating on the specifics, it has been determined that my case is a guaranteed win. That isn't just one opinion either. That is the general consensus from every legal professional that I have explained my case to. In this video, I'm going to briefly go over the timeline and events on two separate cases in an effort to show just how egregious they really are. First and foremost, I do want to state for the record that I'm not your average homeless person. I don't spend my days strolling around town with a shopping cart. I'm just a man who lost his job and was evicted from his rental suite. I do still have my vehicle, which I live out of and sleep in. Furthermore, I've spent copious amounts of time over the last couple of years trying to implement neuro-specific human rights into Canadian legislation, during which I've also been able to acquire the support of half a dozen current members of Parliament in regards to that movement. For the latest updates on my neuro rights efforts, please visit globalneuroethics.com. Alright, on to the first case, the Fraser Valley Regional Library Agassiz location. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, public libraries are somewhat of a sanctuary for homeless people, especially in the wintertime. Libraries have always been a place where homeless people can reliably go for temporary shelter during the day. I would often go to the local library and use the electrical outlets to charge up my devices, but more importantly to escape the cold. Temperatures here in BC can drop as low as -20 degrees Celsius sometimes. For quite a while, I didn't encounter any issues at the library, and employees respected my medical exemption from wearing a face covering. But on December 22nd of 2020, things changed. During the day, an employee named Jackie approached me stating that I need to put a mask on. I told her that I had a medical exemption and I was not required to wear a mask. Jackie didn't accept that, and proceeded to tell me numerous times that it didn't matter if I had a medical exemption and that I needed to wear a mask. Her repetitive attempts at trying to coercively persuade me into wearing a mask didn't work. I stood my ground and reiterated that I have a medical exemption issued in writing from my doctor and that I'm not able to wear a mask, nor am I required to. I said that I was currently homeless, living in my vehicle, and access to the library was very important to me. I also stated that I'm abiding by all of the library's rules and policies, and I have the same right to use the library as everyone else does. I even went as far as inviting her to contact the police if she wanted to. She then stated that she would have to talk to her supervisor, and she left me alone. I was not sure why she singled me out specifically, as I saw a number of other patrons in the library without a mask on, but it was concerning to say the least. On the next day, the 23rd, I had a suspicion that Jackie was going to harass me again, so I decided to start recording audio with my phone and placed it in my pocket before I entered the library.
Remove yourself from the building. Remove yourself from the building.
Why?
Because you're not masked.
I have a medical exemption.
I don't care.
It clearly states on your website.
Please, sir. Please.
It clearly states on your website that you allow people with medical exemptions in the building.
I need you.
Are you not aware of the policies on your website?
I am aware of the policies on my the building.
This woman refused to identify herself twice, so for the purpose of simplicity, I'm just going to refer to her as Karen. Due to her egregious actions on that day, I felt it was vital to get her appearance on camera so she couldn't dodge legal repercussions in the future. It is important to note that the procedure for entering the library was always the same up until this point. An employee greets you at a little desk they set up at the front of the library. They ask 3 specific questions. Have you been outside Canada within the last 14 days? Do you have the Rona, etc.? And then after the 3 questions, they offer you a mask to wear. At which point I always stated that I had a medical exemption and continued on into the library. But on this day, that process, which was so repetitive and constant, took a drastic change. As soon as I stepped foot inside, there were no questions, no offering a mask to wear. Karen went straight to demanding that I leave the library. I can't help but wonder if there's any possibility that the incident with Jackie on the previous day perhaps led to some sort of premeditated planning where they would conduct this kind of egregious discrimination. Something I would love to inquire in during a deposition. Karen stated very clearly that she knows the policies of the library, and I happen to have a screenshot saved of the exact policy in question. So let's take a look. Non-medical masks or face coverings are mandatory for staff and customers and must be worn at all times while inside the library. Children under the age of 2, people with a medical exemption, and those who cannot put their mask on or take their mask off by themselves are specifically exempted. Only one of 2 possible scenarios can be relatively accurate at this point. Scenario 1 is that both Karen and Jackie literally had no idea about the mask exemption policy and refused to adhere to that policy after I clearly showed it to them from their own website stating, quote, "I don't care," end quote. Or scenario 2, they knew about the mask exemption policy and they deliberately refused me access to the library in a disgusting act of discrimination against a person due to their disability, thinking there would be no future repercussions regarding those actions. I wonder if they were both testifying under oath during a deposition, how they would answer such a line of questioning. Furthermore, how would they react to surveillance footage clearly showing other patrons in the library without face coverings? Did they refuse them access and demand that they leave as soon as they stepped into the library? Or did they simply ask them the standard questions at the front and allow them into the library without a face covering? If the latter option were to ring true, that would be very damning in a court of law, wouldn't it?
You need to step outside the building. Please step
I
outside.
do not need to step outside the building.
Jackie?
Can you contact the local authorities, please, Jackie? I have actually been told by the RCMP that if an issue like this arises, to call them. Yeah, so that's what we can do.
You had a mask on yesterday when you came in.
No, I did not.
You did.
No, I did not. I've never worn a mask, ever. I have a medical exemption. It clearly states on your website, right there, on your policies. Jackie was not happy with my request to call the local authorities. Oddly enough, I actually thought I was doing the right thing here. Shortly after the mandate was put into effect in BC, I wanted to be proactive about my exemption to avoid any sort of issues just like this. So I actually got documentation from my doctor stating that I'm unable to wear any face coverings, even though the BC Human Rights Commissioner clearly stated that providing any documentation for confirmation of a mask exemption was specifically not to be required. I was just doing it as a courtesy. Moreover, I actually called into a police detachment and spoke with an information officer asking what I should do in an incident where someone is denying me service due to my exemption. Their advice was to carry a paper copy of the exemption with me and call the police for help if an incident ever occurred. This is why it was so encouraging for Jackie to call the police. Jackie also tried to claim that I was wearing a mask the day before. I'm really unsure of what exactly she was trying to accomplish there. Perhaps it was some sort of psychological move. Nevertheless, it was quite odd. So I got Jackie's name, but again, you didn't want to identify yourself?
I'm a Fraser Regional Library employee.
Okay, you didn't want to identify yourself?
I do not need to give you my name.
Okay. After asking a second time, Karen still doesn't want to identify herself. And to be fair, I don't blame her considering her actions. I don't think anyone would want to identify themselves while committing that kind of heinous discrimination.
We're waiting for what we are
Yes,
told to do.
yes. So I called the RCMP and they specifically told me if there's any sort of issues, to give them a call, ask them to come, and they will sort things out, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
Because, you know, violating human rights on this kind of level should not be tolerated.
Violating my health should not be tolerated.
Violating your own policies on your website should not be tolerated. During that clip, you can hear some pretty significant coughing coming from Karen. I did consider starting a line of questioning that inquired about her current state of health, and if it was a good idea to be working in a public library during that time while she's coughing like that, but I ultimately decided not to. Karen proceeded to allege that I am, quote, violating her health, end quote, by simply being in the library without a face covering, to which I give a simple rebuttal regarding the mask exemption policy on their website. At that point, Karen really has no retort at all and just silently stares at me for minutes while we wait to hear from Jackie. And to be fair, I give credit when credit is due. Just standing there and silently staring at me is by far her most intelligent move of the day. I mean, if she had just implemented that strategy from the get-go, she wouldn't have found herself committing so many acts of discrimination during that day.
Wait a moment.
Are they on their way?
They are, and it just, really, it's just
I
to
can
make
wait
sure,
outside. I can wait outside
It's
for
just to
them.
make sure that we're all on the same page. That's
Yeah,
all
I'm going to
we're
wait
asking.
outside for them
Okay, that's all
because
we're asking.
there's some serious issues going on. After a good 5 or 10 minutes, Jackie finally informs me that the police are on their way, to which I responded by stating that I will wait outside for them. After waiting a while in my car, I decide to also put in a call to the Agassiz RCMP to make sure they actually show up and to get an estimation of how long it would take. After an hour or so, 2 officers arrived. I apologize in advance for the sound quality as I was recording from a device in my jacket pocket and I didn't realize that every little movement that I made would distort the sound quality so much, but it's still good enough to hear everything. So I get out of my car and greet them, anticipating something along the lines of showing them my documentation from my doctor, confirming my exemption, which leads to them informing the librarians that they cannot overtly discriminate against people with disabilities and violate the BC Human Rights Code, especially considering the policy is clearly posted on their website. Oh boy, was I wrong.
You're not welcome here?
What?
Yeah.
Not welcome here, what do you mean?
Well, if you're not willing to wear a mask, then you're not welcome.
It says right on the website people are exempt, like people with mask exemptions.
So they have a right, because it is the municipality's library, to refuse you service. Right? So you have been refused service, so you're free to go. And now you're in the District of Kent's municipal parking lot here.
Okay, just to... Duin?
Duin, D-U-I-N.
Okay. Your name, sir?
Right.
Sergeant. Cool. So, just to clarify here, they are refusing service.
To you.
Okay.
Because you
Have a mask
public health
exemption.
order.
Right.
There's no such thing as a mask exemption. You cannot go into a public place, such as a library or inside of a building, without a mask on.
There's no such thing as a mask exemption. So, on this mandate that I have here, this,
I'm telling you,
which says it's a...
this is the District of Kent's private property. You are not welcome in there without a mask.
Okay.
So I'm not going to debate about exemptions or anything like that.
A lot to unpack in the opening engagement here. The 2 officers identify themselves as Duin and Sergeant. I originally thought that Duin was the experienced one, as he did most of the talking, but after some research on the interwebs, I couldn't find a single thing about him. Although I did find a ton of stuff on Sergeant. Apparently this guy was given the job of detachment commander for the Agassiz RCMP a couple of years ago. Well, his lack of speech during the encounter does make sense. He is the veteran just observing one of his underlings and would most likely give some constructive criticism after the encounter if need be. I didn't expect the "you're not welcome here" and this is private property owned by the municipality which has the right to refuse you service due to your disability kind of approach that they deployed. But what I really didn't see coming was Duin boldly claiming that, quote, "there is no such thing as a mask exemption," end quote. I was so shocked that I actually repeated it back to him in the form of a question, to which he replies, "okay." Unfortunately for Duin, I actually had a hard copy of the mandate on me with the section on exemptions highlighted, so I proceed to pull that out and show it to him. Duin decides that he's not going to debate the existence of mask exemptions. An intriguing strategy on his end. He had no problem with confidently stating, quote, "there's no such thing as a mask exemption," end quote. But as soon as I pull out the actual ministerial order from the government website, which clearly contradicts his statement, all of a sudden he doesn't want to debate it. In all fairness, I don't think anyone in his position at that point would want to try and debate that either. I mean, you could throw Ben Shapiro into that exact situation and it still wouldn't matter. 20% of the entire order is literally explaining in detail all of the exemptions. The fact is in no way, shape, or form even remotely debatable. It is beyond egregious how many people in this day and age are trying to use these mask mandates as some sort of buffet where they can pick and choose which sections they want to abide by. You're a police officer who's paid by my tax dollars to uphold the law, not to blatantly violate it as you see fit. I talked to an information officer,
Okay? So you're
right?
quite
And
welcome
they
to
and they
call the
told me
non-emergency line
that if I
back.
ever encounter any
I'm
issue
speaking.
anywhere, if
See,
I ever
I'm speaking,
I understand that.
right?
You speak and then I'll speak. Okay.
I'm speaking.
I attempt to explain to this guy that I'm just trying to do the right thing here and avoid as much discrimination as possible, and that I was told by an information officer to call for help in a situation like this. But Dewin is just so upset with his own actions, right in front of his boss, remember, that he just wants to silence my speech by asserting his almighty authority that he has as a police officer. Yes, Dewin, you are speaking, and I am speaking. That is what you call a conversation. So go ahead and make your point, and I will retort.
It's owned by the District of Kent,
Okay,
right? It's
but-
like walking into A&W. It's privately owned, right? If they don't want to value service in there, that's their right, because
Okay.
they own the business.
sure.
The municipality.
All right, so you are now comparing the public library to A&W, stating they are both privately owned and that they have the right to refuse service to anyone they wish. So do the taxes that I've been paying over the last 20 years not go towards the public libraries? I thought they did, but I'm no lawyer, so I could be wrong there. I do know a fair amount about human rights though, and that every business, private or not, has to follow the BC Human Rights Code and cannot discriminate against people, which is exactly what has happened here. Unfortunately for me, all of the libraries in neighboring cities are all part of the same organization, the Fraser Valley Regional Libraries. I contemplated moving to a different city in an effort to have access to a public library, but I couldn't find anything that was not under the same organization. So unless I get a legal injunction or court order specifically stating that I'm granted access to those libraries, I'm subject to a criminal charge of trespassing if I were to enter any of them. Something I'm not willing to gamble with. As far as, I understand it, is the Fraser Valley Regional Library have a bunch of different locations, right? Like dozens and dozens all over the Lower Mainland. And it says strictly on their website, people that are, under the age of whatever, have medical exemptions, do not have to wear a mask. It says that very clear. There's no vagueness or ambiguity to that. But now, if you guys are going to go ahead and say that I do not have the right to be in there because they can refuse me service because I do have a medical mask exemption, then that's okay. I can take that up with the BC Human Rights
certainly
Tribunal. Can I have the file number on
No
record?
file number.
No file number.
No, they called the office.
Well, as did I. Can we?
Call the office as well?
Yes. So, can I have some sort of file number that I can reference in my complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal?
Human Rights Tribunal.
Yeah, there's a $75,000 fine for these violations.
$500 fine for not wearing a mask.
Not if you're exempt.
So this is what this is about, I guess.
What's that?
That's what this is about.
Yeah, I have a doctor's note literally in my pocket that's saying I do not have to wear a mask. Dewin thought he was being cheeky by stating there is a $500 fine for not wearing a mask. A simple reminder of the exemptions section within the mandate was necessary. He also didn't seem too happy to hear that I needed the file number of this incident for a Human Rights Tribunal complaint. He sounded like he was well aware that if a Human Rights Tribunal or any sort of adjudicator were to hear the facts of this case, there really is only one conclusion any reasonable person can come to. This case is the literal epitome of discrimination, hands down. Let's move on to the next case against Rick Abbing of Anytime Fitness downtown Chilliwack. I had a membership with Anytime Fitness long before the pandemic started, and never had issues at any location that I visited. On November 21st of 2020, I attained confirmation in writing that the Chilliwack gym allows people with medical exemptions for face coverings to still use the facilities. Over the previous months of coming to this gym, I had a very simple routine that I developed. I would come in during the morning for 10 minutes or so to brush my teeth and use the toilet. Then I would come back in the evening for roughly an hour to shower, shave, brush my teeth, use the toilet, change, etc. During the period of November 2020 to February 2021, I started overhearing numerous people conversing about how horrible it was that I was allowed to use a gym without a face covering and how dangerous it was to their health. I simply ignored all of these comments to avoid confrontation. On February 25th, Rick implemented a time restriction for me that made it impossible to do my normal evening routine. I objected to this and pleaded for him not to, as I was doing the same daily routine for many months. He denied my plea and stated that he could enact whatever restrictions he wanted to, as he owned the gym, and then he used my objection as an effort to try and persuade me into canceling my membership. I responded by stating that is not an option, and in the worst case scenario, I would just use a different location that does not have shower restrictions. At this point, it is my opinion that Rick was trying to do anything he could to remove me from his gym due to my disability regarding face coverings. I then made sure that I never violated his time limit from that point on, as I knew if I was just a second over it, Rick would use that as leverage to terminate my membership. From that day on, I started going to other gym locations to shower to make sure that I didn't violate Rick's policy. I checked with the management of the other locations to make sure there were no shower restrictions and that my doctor-issued medical exemption from wearing face coverings was honored. On the 13th of April, a manager from another location advised me to get my home location to update my file with a special alert regarding my exemption, which can only be done by a member's home location. I sent my doctor's note to Rick Abbing via email and requested that he update my file accordingly. I'm attaching my doctor's note as I have had other locations stating that only my home location can update my file. I request that you update my file with this documentation and specify that I'm unable to wear face coverings. Good evening, Shad. Unfortunately, Fraser Health Order requires everyone to wear a mask or shield. If you're unable to wear a mask or shield at this moment, according to Fraser Health's order, you are not allowed in the club. This super exceeds any doctor's note. That is troubling to hear from my home club. I've spoken with other club managers that have different positions on the matter and do follow Section 4 pursuant to Ministerial Order 425/2020 that was put into effect specifically to prevent discrimination against persons with disabilities. If I'm not allowed to access my home location due to my disability, then I will refrain from doing so unless you indicate otherwise. I am quite curious though, what exactly happened to make this change? I notified this location about my disability back in November, around the same time the mandate came into effect, and it was made very clear to me that people with medical exemptions from wearing face coverings were allowed in the club without issue. I have been using the gym for the last 6 months or so during that time, and it has not been an issue at all. I've even offered my doctor's note to many employees during that time, all of which said it was not required and that they didn't need it. Please let me know what has triggered this severe restriction. Was it the act of sending you my doctor's note via email yesterday? As you know, I am homeless and live in my vehicle and use the gym bathroom for daily cleaning. Even though you've made it very clear that I am unable to use my current home location due to my disability, I will resort to using other locations that welcome me for now. With that being said, I ask that you keep my membership active and keep charging the regular fees. The home location will automatically transfer to a new gym in a month or so. One last thing to confirm, is this Rick Abbing that I'm communicating with in this email chain? Hello, Shad. Yes, this is Rick Abbing. Fraser Health has received a complaint about members not wearing a mask, and we are now told by Fraser Health to comply or be ordered to shut down. They are asking us to monitor for all the hours we are open, and anyone without a mask cannot enter the club. This is in the March 31 order. Plus, I have emails from Fraser Health requesting we comply. Hello, Shad. We are your home club. We have had many complaints about not complying with the Fraser Health regulations that affect each club you have visited. At this time, the risk of the Rona is too high, with also the risk of each club not being in complaints with your personal beliefs. We had no choice but to end your membership with us. We wish you the best and hope you're able to find an alternative solution for your needs. This is incredibly erroneous in every way, shape, and form. There were several locations that had given me written permission from their management, stating that I was welcome to their gym with my disability. If at any time a location told me that I was unable to use their gym due to my conditions, then I simply did not go to that location again. The Ministerial Order 012/2021 that Rick referenced still has the same Section 4 exemptions very clearly stated. I also find it extremely unlikely that Fraser Health would specifically order Rick to completely bypass Section 4 of the order and openly discriminate against people with disabilities. That is something that I would need to see for my own eyes to believe. Rick could have easily demanded that I find a new home location, and I would have had one of the welcoming managers process that request. He also could have suspended my membership until I found a new home location. But instead, Rick decided to outright cancel my membership without notice, cutting off my access to all gym locations. He stated that he had no choice due to complaints from other clubs about my personal beliefs. He did this just hours after I reiterated to him how vital my membership was to me due to my homelessness, and how I would only be using locations where the managers had given me written consent to do so. I don't think my personal beliefs had anything to do with Rick's actions. I believe Rick maliciously attacked my quality of life by blatantly discriminating against me strictly due to my disability. Unfortunately, this attack was incredibly successful. Following this incident, I was unable to contact the welcoming managers at other locations. Furthermore, I've been unable to attain access to any other gym due to my disability, nor can I use the shower at the homeless shelter either. My only option for showering currently is either an Airbnb or a hotel, which I can only afford to do once or twice a month. I have filed complaints to the BC Human Rights Tribunal for both of these cases, but the main issue at hand is that the process can take upwards of a decade to go through. My main goal is to set a precedent through civil litigation that ultimately results in a verdict stating that I have indeed been discriminated against in contravention of Section 8-1 of the BC Human Rights Code, and there are two specific remedies that we will be asking the court for: monetary compensation for damages, as well as a court order requiring the business to provide service to anyone that is exempt from wearing a face covering as per Section 4 of the current mask mandate. I've been advised to pursue the library case first and take it to the Supreme Court of BC through a process called fast-track litigation. In this process, the trial start date needs to occur no later than 4 months of application. Moreover, I could attempt to get a preliminary injunction from the court that would grant me access to the library until the court reaches a verdict. Also, the overall cost in conducting fast-track litigation is often less than the usual process. I do want to state for the record that there will be no settlement in this case. If the library attempts to purchase my silence and quietly sweep this case under the rug by avoiding a trial, I will not let that happen. This is about fundamental human rights, and it is going to be the case that people will be citing in 2022 and onwards for the legal precedent that businesses are not allowed to refuse service to people due to their inability to wear a face covering. It is important to note that civil litigation through the Supreme Court is a very expensive process, and one that I obviously cannot currently afford. So I am asking for assistance for anyone that is willing and able. I'm not just talking about financial assistance either. If there are any decorated constitutional lawyers that would be interested in taking on this landmark case for a reduced fee, please let me know. If there are any facilities in the lower mainland of British Columbia with access to showers that do not discriminate against people who are unable to wear face coverings, please let me know. If there are any local automotive dealerships that are currently hiring sales associates that would be willing to give someone like myself an interview, please let me know. I am licensed under the Vehicle Sales Authority of BC, and I don't look too shabby with a shower, a shave, a haircut, and a suit. It may be hard to imagine in my current state, but please take my word for it. I am Shad Budge on all platforms, and the best way to reach me is through my website at globalneuroethics.com. I also have PayPal, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar Crypto, I even have a PO box. All the links are in the description below. Please make sure that you have enough funds to sustain yourself and your loved ones before donating. And most importantly, please share the video. The more public awareness that my case receives, the higher probability it has of generating success. And always remember that tyranny does not come from tyrants. Tyranny comes from mass compliance. Peace out and be safe.